Security issues related to cloud computing. Well, data breaches is probably the big one here. Again, that shared concept. If you're on a shared network, if you're on a shared device or shared server, there is the potential that bleed over from one side of the virtual host to the other. Any type of shared service runs that risk. It's rare, but it could happen. Data loss. With using a cloud computer or computing service, you're entirely at the mercy of the service provider to, 1, stay in business, 2, keep their services up and running, and 3, make sure that you have access to your data. And so any number of things can go wrong with that. Let's say your service provider happens to be in, let's say, South Florida during hurricane season. You run the risk of that data center being wiped out by a hurricane or taken offline because of power issues or floods. And so just recognize that based on where your service provider is, they may have a whole set of risks that you're inheriting by choosing that service provider. Account or service traffic hijacking. Again, when you're using a cloud service, it relies on you communicating to some internet-based service. And so all of the standard internet attacks of man-in-the-middle, session hijacking, all of those categories of attacks can occur because you now, instead of talking to a file server on my internal network, I now have to communicate out across the open internet to that particular service that I've subscribed to. Insecure application programming interfaces. A lot of the cloud providers will have APIs, application programming interfaces, that allow you as a consumer to do a lot more with that service than just upload files, and it allows you to automate some of those actions. The problem is with these APIs, if they're not secure, that might allow an attacker in to do the same type of activity as well. We participated in a code review, vulnerability, and pen test assessment of an e-commerce platform a while back. And this platform was basically offering online retailers a storefront, payment card processing, anything you needed to do to stand up an online store, if you will. This platform would allow you to do it. Now, what was happening is that for each set of servers they were running 20 or 30 retailers through this particular server. So that means Billy Bob's Pizza Company over here and Jane's online shoe store over there were sharing the same server. Now, that's all fine and good. You can have virtual provisioning that they can't talk to each other. The key was the API. So the e-commerce platform exposed an application programming interface that allowed Billy Bob's Pizza to create new storefronts, create new items, update their inventory, and the same with Jane's Shoes. What they didn't realize at the back end was that API was allowing people to cross between the storefronts. And so through the API, not through the web interface itself, but through the programming interface, you could jump from one store to another and see potential inventory or set inventory in another storefront. So APIs, depending on your cloud provider, really ought to be locked down. So just be aware of that before you select a cloud provider. And again, because you are running on an internet platform, all of those traditional attacks, we talked about session hijacking, denial of service attacks can affect you as well. What are the chances of a denial of service attack on the inside of your network trying to get to your file server? Slim to none. I've seen it happen. It was with a printer that went crazy that bogged down a network link, but it's rare. Compared to how many denial of service attacks do you hear about on the open internet? Well, now recognize the fact that as a cloud service consumer, you now have to communicate over the open internet to that provider, and that's fraught with disaster in terms of the potential for denial of service attacks. And the last one here, some additional security considerations. Malicious insiders. Keep in mind that the service provider that you choose, you have no insight into who the employees are, who has access to your physical servers within this cloud construct, who has access to your data, actually. And so there's a potential for that company to have malicious insiders who decide to just go rogue one day and either delete your data, modify your data, or decide to post your data online. Now, this is rare because these provider companies will go through background checks, they monitor, they have their own security infrastructure, so they're looking for this type of stuff. But it is a risk because, again, you don't control that infrastructure, you don't control the people who have access to it, and that introduces a whole set of attack vectors that you may not previously have considered if you had it inside your network. Abusive cloud services. Yes, there are hackers out there who will use Amazon EC2, Rackspace instances, Dropbox services to host malware, and the use of that may end up affecting you as well. We had cloud-based email that was being hosted on a shared platform with other services. We got a note that said one of the other users of our shared computing platform had been conducting spam and fraudulent email, and therefore our server had ended up on the blacklist of various spam companies out there, and so we might see an impact from people subscribing to those blacklist services would recognize our email address or the IP address of our email server as being blacklisted. Fortunately for us, the service provider cleared that up within a couple days. We didn't see any impact from it. But just recognize that, again, back to that shared service, you're kind of at the mercy of everybody else out there with you. And if everybody, you're all in the same boat. As long as everybody's rowing the oars together and cooperating, you don't have one guy standing up there, rocking the boat, you're probably going to be just fine. The last one I'll mention here is lack of due diligence in researching a provider. There are a lot of different cloud providers out there. A lot of them can provide you with different types of service, different service level agreements, different access to security visibility. You really want to go through and look at your provider or the set of providers that you're considering and make sure that you get what you need out of your service provider.